Hello, 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 ladies. This podcast is designed exclusively for you. This is Her Talk Show, where we dive into inspiring thoughts, ideas, and stories, all with one purpose: to empower and uplift women like you. I'm Sabrina Victoria, your host and guide on this journey of self-discovery and growth. I invite you to hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. Together, we are creating a vibrant community of empowered women. Get ready to unleash your brilliance. Her Talk Show starts now.
We come to you every day with the best speakers, relationship coaches, spiritual mentors, trailblazers, business owners, authors, young hustlers, podcasters, entrepreneurs, fitness trainers, therapists, financial advisors, and more. We ask our guests one question: what do you know that I don't know? Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Talk Show. We have had over 500 women grace this stage, and we are adding another one to the list today. If you are watching us live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love in the comments. Either way, if you are watching this video, if you could do us a huge favor and share it so we can get more eyes and more ears on the awesome content that we are about to share today. We are talking to an amazing woman today. I'm super excited. Megan Camille. She is a psychic and intuitive business consultant who has built her 2 7-figure and multi-6-figure businesses from scratch, relying solely on her intuition and inner guidance. As a single mother of 2 children with no college education, Megan understands firsthand the challenges that come with starting a business from the ground up while raising kids. Yes. At the age of 19, she was sex trafficked and prostituted, an experience that taught her about the harsh darkness of life, but also about the light of opportunity to never settle for mediocrity. Yes, Megan used her innate intuition and psychic abilities to build a successful consulting business that empowers her clients to generate their next 6 and 7 figures while creating lives of sovereignty, joy, and abundance. She embodies her own principles, having since founded her own happily ever after with her husband and now 5 children. Welcome, lady.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. I so appreciate you being here and hanging out with us. You have so much. 5 children. Good on you.
Thank you. I still don't feel old enough or grown up enough to be guiding 5 children through life, but here I am.
I love that you worded it that way. Yeah, that is true, because that's what we're doing, right? Guiding children. We're guiding humans.
Just guiding humans, just keeping them fed and loved.
Yes, 100. I always used to say to my son that I'm not your mother or maid. I am your teacher. That's what I used to say. Like, I'm here to teach you things. Sometimes we get wrapped up in this whole, like, mother is supposed to do all the things. And I think that's only for me, it was like 5 to 7 years old. And after that, like, it's time to teach you some stuff. We got to, like, teach you things now.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And with 5 kids, they've got to be somewhat independent, They've got their own level of sovereignty, because there's only 2 of us parents.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So exciting. Well, I'm super excited to dive into this. You are bringing to us the subject of stepping into your success timeline. And I'm super excited about this because I've actually never heard of this. This doesn't happen very often, where I've haven't heard of whatever the guest is bringing to us. And I've never heard of a success timeline before. So can you first of all just tell us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So when I refer to the success timeline, this is the timeline that our soul aligns with most in order to receive all of our life lessons and gifts and success and joy and pleasure and all of that. However, there's infinite timelines. We can have an infinite number of of experiences and life lessons, but there is what I call like an ideal timeline, our success timeline, which is where we're really in the flow, right? Like we're in our zone, we're in the flow. It's going so well. We kind of wonder, is this happening to me or am I making it happen? Like, what is it? And it is the success timeline is a paradox. It's both happening by you and also for you. And so when we apply that to business, we learn how to, generate money, become a sovereign being, know that our success and our source is not within a 9 to 5, unless, of course, that calls to you. So our success timeline is when we're just in the flow of life. We're in the flow of life. It just is, we're not arm wrestling the universe. We're moving with it.
Wow. When did this come to be for you? When did you create or figure this out?
Oh, it has been such a journey. I really can't say that it was one time, but it was almost like it's been an evolution. It compounded. So when I first started giving readings, I was in high school, actually younger than that, but professionally giving readings to women who were in business or they were C-suite level executives. That's where I really started grounding in some of these truths. Some are relative truth that eventually faded and evolved, and some have been absolute truth, which meant they have just stayed tried and true. So it's been an evolution, but I remember explaining to these women at the very first circle that I held, and that I could see infinite timelines that they were on, and one was highlighted, and that was the success timeline. And this was much different than any other spiritual mentor or anything that I had ever heard before. I lived in a very small, white, conservative town. We were practically ran out for being witches. And so describing this to people, they're like, what the heck are you talking about? And there was only so much I could explain with my humanness, with my human words, because it was coming through intuitively. And so that initial piece of these endless amount of timelines started when I was about 15, when I really started going back into an expanded state of consciousness and accessing that realm and asking for more details, right? Like, what does this really mean? How is it relevant? It's so out there. How does it even apply to the human experience? And so over the years, over the last 20 years, it has kind of just compounded from that moment of describing it to those circle of women.
Wow.
Yeah.
So since you were 15.
Yes. And that's just when I started doing it professionally, because when I was a little girl, I started seeing what I referred to then as shadow people. And I was just honestly very, very blessed to have such an open-minded mother and grandmother who really started to harness what was coming through for me. Supported me to the best of their ability. Of course, even they were like, this is really out of our realm. We don't know what to do with this child. But the last thing that they were going to do was put me on medication or into a hospital, thankfully, because I probably would have qualified for both, considering the experiences that I was having. And so even before I was 15, I was going through all what I would probably describe now with more language is a spiritual awakening, is high levels of consciousness and vibration coming into quite a small body, and really trying to figure out what was the difference between logic and my mind and make believe and then these downloads. And so, 7 or 8 years into it, I had really settled into just being able to tap in, and I was extremely psychic. I knew things that were about to happen, and then they happened. And I knew when something was off, when someone was lying, when there was not transparency or authenticity or integrity. I could just feel it. I could see it. I could hear it. It even started as like I could taste sounds, right? I could smell colors. It was a full body experience. And then at 15, my mom has been an entrepreneur almost my entire life, and she was holding women's empowerment circles. And it was women who were both in business and also very spiritually inclined and curious. And so that's how, she brought me along and said, here's what Megan can do. Who would like some support? And that's where I felt the most me, the most in flow and in that success timeline.
Awesome. I know that there was a point in your life when you were younger that's a pretty heavy story. How does that thread into all of this beautifulness that you just shared with us?
Yeah, it threads actually very beautifully with it. It was my own sort of hero's journey. Although I had this skill, I don't call it a gift, we all have it, but it was a skill that was, used so much that I was really good at it at a young age. And that particular skill also had me feeling very separate, very out of tune with humanity and my peers, especially. I was still a teenager. I was still in school. I was still having these very polar opposite experiences of coming of age and being boy crazy and wondering what I was going to do with my life. And then yet also diving into these realms that were beyond mind comprehension. They were beyond the logic. And so I felt very dissociated sometimes, like, which one am I? Who am I? And I had a yearning to fit in. And along with all of this spiritual development that was happening, my father had also left. I did not have a dad growing up. My mom had been married and divorced many times. And that was definitely one of those core wounds that was being folded into my own personal evolution. And so, early on in adulthood, 18-ish, 19-ish, almost 19, a friend of mine and I went to an 18 and up club where I met a particular someone, a guy who was well into his 40s. Of course, I didn't know at that time. I was still 18, underdeveloped frontal cortex, frontal lobe, and all of that, but very Twitter-baited, very lustful and caught up in his attention and seeming approval of me, and was swept away quite quickly and ended up being sex trafficked by this person to Las Vegas, where I spent 4 years as a prostitute. Yeah. And it was very, very woven in to what I was also experiencing spiritually, which was like, I don't want this anymore. I just want a normal life. I just want to be average. I want to be normal, not tuning in and tapping into people that I don't know, that, at the time I didn't really care about. I was a teenager. And so while trying to repress that and move away from that, I was also moving toward someone who was giving me the time and attention that I didn't receive from a father figure. So it was a perfect storm, if you will.
Did you know what was happening while it was happening, or were you kind of like glazed over for a second?
So this is where there is some distinct difference between my humanness and my intuition, because intuitively I always knew, right? And that's the thing with intuition, is that it's always, always, always there. And we get so good at ignoring it and going into thoughts and emotions and logic and people pleasing and all of that. So in hindsight, especially after all of the playing and healing and work that I've done around it, I can still look back and see the moments I had the intuition. Sometimes it would come through the voice of another person. I remember running into a woman and she just said, "Go home. go home to your mom. Don't stay here. Like, whatever you've got to do, get out. And I remember that clicking for me, going like, there was truth in it, right? I had the chills, and just this knowing that I probably ought to go home. If there is a way for me to get out, I should. And overriding that with the yearning for his acceptance and his approval.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did the journey out of that look like?
The journey out of it was harder than the journey in it. It was harder to leave than it was to get wrapped up. It was also harder to leave than it was to be there surviving. Leaving is really where I see my internal, my self inquiry process begin, was when I started coming out of this fog. And of course, you know, it had been a few years, so I was in my early 20s and not in my teens anymore. And so a lot was happening in that time, but leaving was where I really started asking myself the question, like, what allowed me to get here in the first place? And what kept me here? And why do I know that I must leave and still I want to stay? Right? There is a point in time where I moved from victim to chooser. I was choosing to be there eventually after so much grooming and, you know, mental slavery. Pretty soon you're choosing this, right? It's like no longer happening to you. I was an active participant. And so this self-inquiry that started happening, like, what is it that I want here? What am I running from? What am I hiding? That was really the cracking open for me, which was, I am never going to get from him what I think I can. That I can't get it from him. I had no idea where I could get it, but I was starting to learn that it wasn't from him. And so the journey after was far more challenging. I ended up deep into drugs and alcohol, whereas my 4 years there, I did not touch a single drug and never drank. It was totally against his rules. And so the year and a half that followed, leaving Vegas, leaving that life, was excruciating. It was full of drugs, sex, rock and roll. I ended up suicidal. And it was definitely the rock bottom where I found that inner strength to start again.
I've never heard this before as far as victim to chooser.
Yeah.
And I totally agree.
Yeah.
Although my story is not like your story, I have been with a person that was not nice. And yeah, there is a point where you could leave and you choose to stay. So interesting. Is that you, or is that, like, where did that come from? Victim to chooser?
I have no idea. I just said it. But I really do resonate with it. And now this could be super controversial for some people, right? However, in my experience and the depths that I've gone with the healing of that particular experience, I absolutely am in line with free will, free choice. And once I could step out of, he did this to me and it was happening to me, and I could move into a neutral position where I was no longer identifying as only Megan. I was identifying as source consciousness, right? Which is where I go when I tune in. When I tune in and support clients, or I'm doing readings, it's in that place. And from that place, I could see with the 30,000 foot view, there was a choice point. There's a choice point. There's a choice point. And oftentimes, at least in my experience, I didn't want to recognize the choice point. It was easier to say he is making me stay than to say I am choosing to stay.
Yeah.
The shame and embarrassment and humiliation that comes with choosing your own pain, that comes with choosing your own abuse, your own sacrifice, is a whole nother playing field. Being the victim is one playing field, absolutely, and there is so much lesson in that. And then that next playing field, that sort of next room, is the discovery of our free will and our free choice in it. Now that's my story. There's probably lots of people that may have even a more severe one, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that is where my freedom came from, was seeing my free will in it.
Yeah. So resonate with that, and so appreciate the vulnerabilism in that. My story is with a narcissistic person, and there was a freedom in acknowledging my actions in that. I think so many times when you see a story of victim and
Perpetrator.
thank you. I was going to say prey, but I'm like, that's the same thing. Thank you. It's always the person's fault. It's always like, it's his fault. He's the bad guy. If only I can't. And it all goes back to them. And I remember there was a point where I heard something or read something that said, every situation that we're in, unless we're like chained, right? But like every situation we're in, there's a reason that we're getting something out of it. There's always something that you're getting out of it. And I remember when I heard that, I was like mad. I was like, what? Absolutely not getting anything out of this. I am stuck. I am a prisoner. And exactly what you said, there is a point where you kind of like, you're good. You're like, it's weird, but you're like comfortable. You like know what to expect.
Yes.
Know the reactions. You don't know what the outside is going to look like. And it can get kind of scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And familiarity is safety, right? Familiarity is safety. Or in that resonant moment. That's a relative truth, in my opinion, because familiarity is no longer safety to me. I feel very safe to be in the unknown, but at that time, I didn't. And some of my greatest healing came from no longer seeing me as his victim and him as my perpetrator.
Yeah.
And eventually, where it has ended up is seeing me in him and him in me, that there was less separation than what I once experienced between us. And so now I hold him near and dear to my heart. I love him for the gifts that came from that time. It was a fast becoming, right? We can have our awakenings both through pleasure and through trauma. And at that time, I was resonating with my life lessons coming through as trauma. And so the way that I give thanks and gratitude and love for my mentors now, he also, whether he receives it or not, I don't know, who knows where he is, but I give that gratitude and that thanks for the experience that allowed me to see my power. Like how powerful I am to be able to give my livelihood over to somebody, right? Like how powerful I am to endow him with the experience to get to play that role. And so the like collapsing the separation between us is where I found my freedom over many years, right? It wasn't like 2 years and I'm like, whoa, that was a good ride, right? It has been evolution as all things are.
Yeah. And I love that you're talking about the timeline. Yeah. Cause I think sometimes listening, right? Like there's a ton of people watching live right now, and there are people that are still in that arena where you are not good. You're just not not seeing where Camille's coming or where Megan's coming from, and recognizing that it takes some time, and it's different for everybody.
Yeah, it is different, and it belongs. It belongs, right? The moments that I was in deep despair and like, wow, that is now like, it just felt like this mark on my life. How could I ever get rid of what had happened? Right? There was despair in that, and that belonged. That was part of the process. And the hatred, right? The hatred and the resentment, that belonged. That I actually wouldn't be in this space to love him so unconditionally if I didn't also feel so deeply the hate at some particular time, right? That fuel that helped me say, fuck this, I am getting out, right? Like that belonged too. It wasn't like, oh, I love you, kind sir, I'm going to depart now, right? It was like, oh my God, I've got to find some fire. I've got to find some Kali energy here to really catapult me and get out of this sort of vortex that we had created.
Yeah. Now I know that you talk often about how this situation that we're talking about actually helped with your business. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, what for sure was, there's so much that came from those moments, from those experiences that still play out today. For example, I can start from the bottom and just to get to just about anywhere at this point. So starting over for me is no longer scary. And it's because when I came out of that experience, I had a record. So I could not get a job any place. He left with millions of dollars. I left with a record. And so I couldn't afford anything that I still had. I lost everything and couldn't get a job. So that right there was just like, had to start from the ground up. What would I do? Like, what can I do if I'm not selling my body and I can't get a job any other place? And this was in the time, like way before OnlyFans, like it's a vibe now, but then it was not. And so being able to start from that ground zero, and part of that journey, I met my previous husband, who's the father of 2 of my children, who was we were a stepping stone in each other's journey, where he scooped me up and just sort of took me out of that life and nurtured me for a little while. And we ended up having a couple babies together. And I eventually, years in, I was having that calling that I wanted to do something in the world. I wanted to be of service in a way outside of what I was already doing, because being a mom is a great service to the world. And I had it more, right? There was more that was calling me. And that was when I discovered, even though it had been so many years later, I still had a record. I thought that it was going to fall off, but instead I still had a record. Nobody would employ me. And my then husband wanted us to stay in the agreement that we had, which was I would cook dinner and raise the children and be at home. And if I didn't agree to that, then I needed to go off on my own. And I chose to go off on my own and follow my intuition and build that initial business. And so in that moment of not necessarily aloneness, right? Because I've always had a greater power with me. But in that moment of I get to figure this out for me, was it replicated where I left off coming home from Vegas. Was no one can save me. Like no one can pull me out of this. Yep. No one can get me better except for me. And so in those moments, and even still now I play a bigger game and I play with millions of dollars, and the fear is still there every once in a while. What if I lose it all? What if I can't do this? What if this is too much for me? What if I'm not capable? All of the reasons I'm not capable, I don't trust myself, I'm afraid. All of those beliefs is what got me into the arms of a pimp, right? And it's also the same thoughts that will take down a business. And so having worked with those thoughts, I don't trust myself, I'm not capable. Who am I to hold this? And alchemizing those fears into strengths is how it's replicated time and time again in 4 different businesses at this point.
Very awesome. I know that well, first of all, before we pivot here, I want to ask, I've interviewed, well over 500 women at this point, and I always find it very interesting, individuals who are comfortable telling their dark story and individuals who aren't comfortable telling their dark story, and the reasons behind it. All valid, right? Mm-hmm. All valid. What was why did you decide to eventually, I don't know when you decided, but to eventually share this dark story worldwide with your community?
Yeah. Well, this story has not always been one that I've shared, right? I remember not even going to Thanksgiving dinner with my family. I just couldn't bear to be seen. I couldn't bear to be seen. It was humiliating. I was, and then as a new young mom, oh God, I would just wake up with nights of terror. Like, oh my God, I am out there on the internet. I have this record that may never go away. This story is going to follow me forever. It was such a sickening feeling. And what has come from going within and not cowering to the shame is the healing of the shame, the transmuting of the shame. And, started with talk therapy and eventually got much, much deeper into more transcendental experiences, primarily plant medicine, allowed me to go into the depths and see this story as no longer a darkness, but actually like a light for other people and for myself, right? It couldn't actually be light for other people until I could allow it to be a light for me, which was that I was capable, that I could go to the depths. I mean, that was a hellish experience. There was abuse on all levels. There was pandering. It was just could be considered a horrific experience. And I allowed myself to go back, and so many professionals have their own opinions on this, but I allowed myself to go back time and time again so that I could see it from different points of view, and not only from I'm a survivor of this victimhood, right? Like that was the first one. And then it was, I am a chooser of that victimhood. Mm-hmm. And then I am a perpetrator of that victimhood, because eventually he had me doing, I chose with him to do the same to other people. Mm. So it was the choosing to go back and see all points of view that allowed me to sink into, this is just one aspect of life. Yeah. It is not who I am. That moment is not who I am. It was just an experience. And so being able to relive it from other aspects got me really comfortable with how it served me and how it could serve other people. And I think it's really important to know that no matter how bad it looks, it doesn't mean it's forever. It doesn't mean it's forever, and you can still rebound. You can do something different. You can choose differently.
Yeah, definitely. Choice.
Yeah.
You talk a lot so you are a business coach. Yes. I love your take on it as far as the intuitiveness of it. Mm-hmm. You talk a lot about energy versus strategy within businesses. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as, we're talking to a female crowd here, predominantly female. a lot of them are entrepreneurs who are, business owners. And, there is this lull of how to run it, how much of it is supposed to be organized and strategic and numbers and graphs, and then how much of it is supposed to be through intuitiveness or, energy. So can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, just some basic, simple principles that I support my community with is that it's 80% energetic, 20% strategic. There's endless amounts of information out there. You can choose any strategy you want and go and find it on the internet. And 87% of businesses shut down because of cash flow, not because of lack of strategy, but because of cash flow. And less than 2% of women ever cross 7 figures, ever, collectively, not in a year, ever. And it's not due to a lack of strategy. There's so, and we can even boil it down to one simple strategy: have an audience and sell to them. It doesn't matter if you are a realtor or you're a doctor or you're a coach or you're a consultant. Have an audience and sell to them. That's the strategy. And there's lots of ways to get there. Now, where the breakdown comes in all of the businesses that fail in that first 5 years is they spin out, right? They're like, I don't know what to do. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I don't know. Okay, I know in 9 to 5, if I hustle and grind and I trade my time for money, I'll eventually get successful. So let me take that template and put it into entrepreneurship. And then they're either burnt out or cash flow flatlined.
Yeah.
And the tipping point is knowing our own natural rhythm and how to follow our intuition. When we can follow our intuition and we know our natural rhythm, which is like, when do I come alive? Where is my flow energy? Where am I most potent? What do I love to focus on? Knowing that natural rhythm, and then we follow our intuition, we're naturally delivered a strategy that will get us from where we are, where we want to be. And that is, 80% energetic and 20% strategy. Strategy is easy. We can just schedule that onto the calendar. It's the energetics of learning to trust yourself, learning to listen to your intuition, and embodying your capability. Women especially question themselves. And I have a couple business ventures with men. And when it's time to invest money in their business or it's time to make a decision, they're just like, yeah, let's fucking do it. Cool. Here we go. Women go, I don't know if I should. What about my children? Well, I should wait until they're older, or I don't want to have my family suffer because I'm in here investing in my business. And so there's all of this questioning of self instead of leaning on that pull, that intuition that is literally pulling us forward, right? It is like, let's go, girl. It's like, by the collar for me. Like, you've got a mission, get to it. And that's the energetic, like, follow the energetic, let it envelop you and show you the way.
Yeah. Your numbers are pretty strong as far as 87% shut down because of lack of money. 2% ever crossed past 7 figures. Is that right?
Yeah. Women.
Yeah. Women. Thank you. Thank you for that. Lack of money. Yeah. Women. Thank you. Why? What is our problem?
Yeah. Well, our problem is we're trying to be men. We're trying to do it like men, which is strategy. Don't get me wrong. I love strategy. And after building 4 multiple 6 and 7 figure businesses, I know a fuck ton about strategy. Okay. And it is where there is the least amount of momentum. It is the container. We must have it. So I love the strategy. I'm not saying don't do strategy. Absolutely not. I've got many people on my team who are helping me read the numbers and choosing our next best step and that sort of thing. And it's where there's the least amount of momentum. The most amount of momentum is in our intuition. It is in playing with the energetics and in following that calling. For example, my favorite is business coaches who recommend, especially early on in business, let's before $500,000, to go and do market research, which, by the way, is going out into the world and asking the world to tell me what to do, to tell me what it wants, and then to tell me how to price it, which is exactly how we create something we do not want. Intuitive business says, if you have the desire to be of service in a particular way, there must be a demand. The way that if there is dark, there must be light. If there is a question, there must be an answer. So if we have a desire, it is already in demand. We cannot desire something that has nothing pulling for it to be born, right? And so when we simply follow that desire and then we speak our truth instead of going, what will that person read? What can I write or what can I talk about that person will read and hear and then choose to buy from me? That's energetic manipulation. When we come from it, this is what I must speak, this is what I must share, then we naturally call in the people who are resonating with your desire to be of service. Now, when we have that energetic alignment and integrity going, we put in strategy, right? Because there's still a funnel. We still want to help those ideal clients that are reading our authentic words or hearing our authentic message find their way into our containers, 100%. But don't start with the container. You lose yourself in that. You lose yourself in what the world wants you to think, right? Figure out their pain points and then cure their pain. Most people don't even know what their own fucking pain points are. They think they know. They think it's money. They think it's a vacation. But it isn't getting to the source. It isn't getting to the source. And we get to the source of that when we're in our source and in our authenticity, not lost in strategic steps.
Definitely agree with that. And yes, strategy.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot, and I'm sure you see this too. Do you coach strictly females, by the way, or do you do both, males and females?
I do both.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I work predominantly with females. I mean, it's her nation. So
yeah.
Pretty much although I have had a few men contact me. I think there is some confusion sometimes, and I would love for you to maybe expand on this in intuitiveness, energy, checking in. It doesn't have to be hard. And not doing anything at all because you're scared.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a great time for radical self-honesty and radical responsibility. And that part of like not doing anything because you're scared and then masking it with words like intuition and energy is what I call manifestation mentality, which is I'm going to meditate my way to 1 million. Doesn't happen that way. And yeah, that's where I'm like, we got to have some strategy. We got to have some of this. However, strategy doesn't actually fix that piece where you think you can manifest and not be an active participant. You don't get to be passive to life. and expect it to come to you because you hit your theta wave in meditation, right? Like that just isn't how it happens. And I love talking about the ease and grace of business. And the reason why business is easy and graceful for me now is because I've done hard things long enough to make them easy. I didn't stop at, this is uncomfortable. Yeah. Uncomfortability is a very vital part of life. I actually just wrote an email talking about the thrashing that happens in business. It's a lot like birth. The big pregnant woman is so excited to have her baby, and the adrenaline is pulling her through. She's sure she can handle all of it. She just can't wait to hold that real life trophy. And then she goes into the next phase, which is she's out of breath and the pain is beyond mental comprehension. And she starts questioning herself. Am I capable? What the hell am I doing? Never mind. And if there was a moment to push, I give up, most women would.
Yeah.
Nature does not allow you to give up.
Yeah.
And so you go into the next phase, which is you surrender.
Yeah.
You surrender and you allow for the thrashing that happens in the mind, in the body, in the soul, that eventually collides with source, life itself, and moves the baby from the womb earth side. And if people, men, women, cannot allow for the thrashing and they want to give up, they are not prepared for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship gets easy after you've done it long enough for it to no longer be hard. But you don't get the trophy of an easy, graceful business if you can't withstand a little discomfort.
Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Because I think that's the part that's missing, is we're grabbing on to the first half of this podcast and we're missing the point where you did have to do hard things in order to get to where you are now. And then you can kind of ease into it, because that's really where I am right now. It's like, but I worked hard. Like I worked hard to get to where I am. So yeah, right now it's easy for me to say, yeah, it feels good. There's a flow and it's nice. Although I do still work hard, but there's a difference in the mentality. And I think sometimes women are using those words to give an excuse for the lull that's in their business. And they're not coming face to face with the thrashing for no other reason other than fear, nerves, uncertainty, all of that goodness. And I love how point blank you were with that. If you're not going to do it, then you're not prepared to be an entrepreneur. Point blank.
Yeah, the number of nights, and it is actually learning the alchemization process. How do I take this overwhelming anxiety and expand into abundance? How do I take this overwhelming fear and expand into excitement? That has really allowed me to enjoy the process. I don't look at a challenging moment in business now as, well, maybe this is a sign from the universe that I shouldn't do it. Actually, it's a sign for me to go in, right? Like what's coming up for me here? Why is this anxiety surfacing at this moment? What is really here to teach me? Because no universe is going to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. This isn't your purpose. That's not how the source consciousness works. And so I go at many nights, I've been on my hands and knees like, I think I'm going to throw up. What the hell am I doing? Look at this team I have to support now. And look at this lifestyle. It's a bigger fucking fall from here than when I was trying to get to $10,000 a month or $50,000 a month. It's a big fall. And so allowing myself to be in the alchemization of this is a lot of responsibility into this is my greatest privilege. So the alchemization in it must be present, or it will just take you down. And my life is so easy now that I actually bring in difficulty, right? So I do cold plunges. I sit in 39-degree water for 5 or 6 minutes at a time. I've actually need to bring that in. It continues to cultivate my capacity to be with all things.
Yeah. This has been phenomenal. I could just keep talking to you, but I know you're busy. So this has been so great. I very rarely go past 40 minutes. So this is phenomenal. I so appreciate you, Megan. We have a ton of people watching live. Before we wrap up here, I would love for you to kind of give us a breakdown of exactly what you do and exactly who should be contacting you. If there's anyone here listening where they're like, this is somebody I would like to work with, who contacts you? Who do you work with?
So the superficial answer is people who want to find their sovereignty through business, who want to know how to generate their own income, or they're already in business and they're ready to restructure it in a way that fits their lifestyle instead of, dictates their lifestyle. The way I work is intuitively. So I'm tapped in and tuned in, and my goal is to support every single one of my clients to get to that point of trusting their own intuition that they never need another business coach again. And of course, with that, we are curating a beautiful step-by-step business blueprint that scales, that gets you to your first 6 figures and eventually your first 7 figures. And it is through the way of self-actualization. So there is internal deep dives going on. There is expanding into our higher self, and there is strategy. It's all of the above.
Beautiful. Where can people find you if they'd like to follow you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at the Megan Camille. I'm online at megancamille.com. And Facebook is Megan Camille. The Facebook group is Intuitive Business Consulting with Megan Camille.
Awesome. Where do you hang out the most on all those?
Email. I hang out in email. Social media is not my most favorite. It's my second most favorite. But, I would say probably Facebook is where I would personally hang out. I've got a nice support system that puts stuff out for Instagram and that sort of thing, but you'll see most of my personal stuff on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you so much. For those of you watching live, thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us. For those of you watching on the replay, like I said, make sure you hashtag replay so we can send you some love in the comments. If you resonate with Megan and all of the goodness she shared today, this was phenomenal. Make sure that you connect with her. Her website is megancamille.com. It is in a clickable link in the description wherever you're watching us at. And if you happen to find her on social media, she would be on Facebook. Any closing thoughts, Megan, as we wrap up?
Oh, this has been such a pleasure. I feel like we hit all the boxes today. Such a beautiful conversation, and I'm really so honored to have been able to talk with you today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was really awesome. That brings us to an end of another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our amazing guest speaker, Megan Camille, for sharing her wisdom and inspiring us all. To each and every one of you, our dedicated listeners, thanks for staying with us until the very end. Your support and engagement means the world to us. Remember to follow, like, and share with your fellow trailblazers. Join me again in our next episode for more captivating stories, enlightening thoughts, and empowering ideas to fuel your journey toward becoming the best version of yourself. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue these transformative conversations. Until next time, do something awesome.